Today we're going to get started on the drivetrain. So that would include the crank, the chain, the shifting cable, and of course the Sturmey Archer 3-speed hub. That's what's happening on this episode of Featherstone Bicycles. So the first thing we're going to do is take the crank apart because we are going to have to soak these bearing cages quite a bit. So get that process started. Not going to use the wire wheel on the whole chain ring. I just like to get in between the teeth because that's impossible to do with and very tedious to do with steel wool. But I just use dry steel wool on the outside, the chrome parts. And then we'll hit the rest of these pieces up where they're rusty. So the next step in the process will be to clean our chain. And get that in there like that. Pour some solvent in. Fill line. Put our top back on. And start pulling it. Well, without a doubt, that is the greasiest, dirtiest chain that I've ever worked on. 71 years old. But I couldn't even, multiple times through that chain cleaner, and actually even refilled the solvent in there once. And when I was doing that, I noticed that it was that all the loose grease and everything that came off. Again, don't grease your chain, only oil it. Was built up on the bottom of the cleaner, of the chain cleaner from Park Tool. So I'm now having to put it in the parts washer and see if I can do any better there. You can see I gave up there pretty quickly and just decided to let the chain soak in the solvent for at least a couple days. Everything about this drivetrain, as I'm calling it, is a mess as far as greasy, dirty. I've been going through with Q-tips dipped in the solvent and just getting inside the crevices here, which I really couldn't get at. And, well, you can see the result. And I'm not even really sure they're 100% clean. We've got this little hole that the nub here on the crank fits through. And I'm still getting dirt, grease off of there. Anyway, we'll move on to putting some steel wool on this. Man, I had just as hard a time getting this chainring back on over the threaded part as I did getting it off. I don't know if you were able to see that in the time lapse, but and also this cone nut, getting it clamped down on there. I had to get the large adjustable wrench out again and just do it. Really, I don't know, back in the day, back in the 50s, they made them a little bit different than they made them in the 60s and 70s. So, like I said, we're going to let those bearings soak, because the grease, if the grease is anything in there like it is on the chain, or as it was on all this stuff, it's going to need quite a while. And we'll get that in that slot. Even this washer is difficult. Okay, that's all done. I wanted to show you something here. Sorry. On the shifter, I've worked on quite a few Sturmey Archers before, Sturmey Archer 3-speed hubs, and I don't know if you remember back in the beginning, I think when I was tearing it apart, that I said I think the person might have been left-handed, because this was on the left-hand side, like that, maybe. At any rate, when I thought about putting it on the right hand side, which is where they normally are, I thought, wait a minute, now that's kind of weird, because the whole thing, the Sturmey Archer and the 3, the lettering is upside down. And again, I said that in the 60s and 70s, there was either marked right on this, or there was a plastic bezel that went over it that had 1, 2, and 3 marked on it, and that's where the lever lined up told you what gear you were in. Well, upon closer examination, I see that there's an H, a N as in Nancy, and an L. So for high, neutral, and low. Again, those 3-speed hubs, when you're in second gear, it's just like a coaster brake. Yeah, there's no effect of the gear ratios on the drivetrain. So, and then 1 is low and 3 is high. So I noticed that there was this little window here, and I cleaned it up and noticed that there is a H there for high. And then when you shift it down, you get an N. And then if you shift it down again, you get an L. And trust me, it took a lot of that pro lubricant to get this to even work right. The other thing I noticed about these is that they, in the 50s, this older model, usually in order to get this off, you would have to go down to the lowest gear, and then you'd have a little bit more room to lever it down, and that would lift this plate here up, and then you could as you can see, there's a little stop on the cable. You were able to then slide that through and get it out. And then this whole thing came out because it was in a slot here. Well, there is no slot there. It's actually screwed on. And then what you have to do, you see that there's this little spring clip here. You have to get that up and over like that. And then you can lift that up and then you can get this out like that. So I have a short out there somewhere way back when that, and then to put it back in, you just bring it down past there, past this little gear here, and then there's a place for it to slide in, and then you put that back down, and then you just get this pressed back over this spring. You can't do the other method on this because once you get into low gear, there's this bar here that prevents you from going any further. Anyway, that's the way that this older one works, which I had to figure out by trial and error. And then this just screws back in. So that's how that works. But it is weird that the Sturmey Archer is upside down, but obviously the lettering is right for it to be on the right-hand side. If you put this underneath so that you can read the Sturmey Archer, the lettering for, well, the H and the N don't matter because they're the same upside down or what, but the L obviously matters. Now it looks like a 7. So we're gonna wait to clean that up a little bit and we'll get on to taking the back wheel apart. Before I started to take the spokes out, I thought I'd check with the manual, and I'm going back to my, not the more recent manual, but the old manual I got out of the Schwinn honey hole. And son of a gun, if they don't talk about, first of all, the Sturmey Archer shifter with the H, N, and L indicator window. And they talk about it being either an AW hub, which is an older model, or the new SW hub. And they say that the new SW hub has a long nut on each side with the left-hand nut having a hole in it so that the indicator spindle may be seen. So what they're talking about there is this hole right here, so that when you're pulling the chain or the cable in and out, you can see where because in the neutral position, the collar, so after the last link, there's a little collar for the spindle, and that has to be just lined up with the end of the axle. That's neutral. I believe that's low or high, and then one more out is low or high. Anyway, that's neutral, then in, then out. The funny thing is, I had to wipe the grease off here, and I hope you can see it right there. It says AW. So it's the older style hub, yet it has the indicator window. So I would imagine at some point someone at the bike shop or wherever got one of these and put it on here, because apparently that was not part of the original AW. But anyway, I'm going to take it apart, buy the book. It is a little bit easier to get the guts of these out while the spokes are still in the wheel. So that's what I'm going to do. And by the way, you can see why we decided to use new rim strips. We are going to call it there. I finally was able to get the entire gear assembly out, and now I have to get this off out of the hub, and I'm not sure. I think this is just a dust ring or retaining ring in here for the bearing cage, but I had to put some WD-40 down in there because that part is threaded, and it's on there, so I'm going to have to let that soak for a day or so. Pretty sure that this is like I said, a dust cap or a retaining ring, and I need to get that out in order to get the bearing cage out, so I'm going to have to let that soak as well. Thanks for sticking with me, and I'll see you next time on Featherstone Bicycles.